Every night, the single dad cleaned offices in silence, until the billionaire's daughter stayed late and simply asked, "What's your name?" The building sighed under the weight of midnight. Most lights were dimmed, except for the stubborn flicker of a fluorescent bulb in the break room, blinking like a tired eye refusing to sleep. Desks sat empty, monitors black, coffee mugs abandoned in haste. The glossy marble floors, once trodden by polished shoes and hurried footsteps, now echoed with quiet, a hush only broken by the soft swish of a mop and the occasional creak of a janitor's cart. Ray moved like a shadow, deliberate and unseen. His gray hoodie was worn at the elbows, and his cleaning gloves were patched at the fingers. He worked with practiced care, gently straightening chairs, wiping away smudges, and emptying bins overflowing with papers that whispered stories of power, wealth, and ambition, worlds far removed from his own. No one ever said thank you. Security guards glanced up from their phones as he passed, offered nothing more than a brief nod before returning to mindless scrolling. The last straggling employees walked right past him, eyes fixed on their screens, voices discussing weekend plans he could never afford. To them, Ray was part of the background, like the humming vending machine or the soundless elevator. Always there, never noticed, but he didn't complain. He couldn't afford to. Each polished floor tile meant another day with the lights on at home, another meal for his 10-year-old son, Liam. Every night, he traded his fatigue for dignity, quiet, uncelebrated dignity. He was used to the routine. Invisible was safe, predictable, painfully steady. Until that night. She didn't belong in the after-hours world of cleaning crews and empty cubicles. Her heels clicked against the tiled floor. Too elegant, too deliberate. She wasn't rushing. She was wandering, curious, confident. Talia. He didn't know her name yet, only that she didn't carry the same air of indifference as the others. Her presence held a strange weight, not heavy, but purposeful, as if she was searching for something she didn't yet understand. Ray was bent over, wiping down a glass conference table when he noticed the shift in energy. Someone was watching, not with annoyance or judgment, but attention. He looked up. There she was. Maybe it was the silence between them that made it so startling. Maybe it was the fact that no one, in all these years, had paused long enough to look at him like a person, not a utility. She tilted her head slightly, almost puzzled, almost warm. Then came the words. Gentle, curious, disarming. "What's your name?" Ray blinked. In all his nights scrubbing away the world's disregard, no one had ever asked. Not like that, not with meaning. And just like that, the air shifted. The silence was no longer empty. It was expectant. He straightened, not sure what to say, not sure why his throat felt tight. But one thing was certain. This night would not be like the others. Ray had the kind of face that spoke in quiet paragraphs, lines around his eyes that hinted at sleepless nights, a gentle slouch that wasn't from age but from years of caring more than most men should. He was 42, though the mirror often showed him someone older, not from time, but from weight, grief, sacrifice, and the quiet, unending ache of starting over alone. 10 years ago, the love of his life, Clara, had smiled at him through the hospital glass just before going into labor. She never came back. Complications, they said. Sudden, unfair. He never blamed the doctors. He blamed time. The way it moved too fast when you begged it to slow. The way it gave you moments, only to snatch them away before you could hold them tight enough. Liam came into the world crying. Ray never let him hear him cry back. He named him after Clara's favorite book character. Noble, brave, full of wonder. He wanted his son to grow up with stories and softness, even if the world didn't always offer either. During the day, Ray was a father in every sense of the word. He made Liam's lunches with notes tucked inside, little scribbled lines from poems he remembered teaching long ago. He braided his son's unruly curls with more patience than skill, dropped him off at school with a kiss to the forehead, and watched him walk away with a backpack too big for his small frame. Then he went home, slept for a few hours, if the anxiety allowed it, and rose again for the night shift before Clara passed. Ray had been a high school literature teacher, not the kind who droned on about Shakespeare, but the kind who made kids fall in love with words. He'd once believed in the power of language to heal, to awaken, to connect. His classroom was lined with handwritten quotes from Maya Angelou and Wendell Berry, and every Friday, students wrote journal entries he swore never to read, unless they asked him to. After the funeral, he tried to return, lasted a month, Grief made the words too heavy, the chalk too dry, the eyes of students too unfamiliar without her in the world. Bills mounted, support systems frayed. One day, he picked up a mop instead of a marker, and no one asked why. Now, he walked through polished buildings where ambition echoed in every hallway, yet no one spoke his name. He cleaned the remnants of a life he no longer had, smeared whiteboards filled with strategy, not story. Office desks lined with photos of families, reminders of what he was raising alone. But Ray was never bitter. He had no space for it. Bitterness took root in hearts that had stopped hoping, and despite everything, Ray still believed in morning light, in second chances, even if they came in small, unnoticed forms, in hugs before bedtime and the way Liam whispered, "You're the best dad ever," as if it were a secret between them and the universe. Still, in the quiet hours, when Liam was asleep and the world had moved on, Ray felt it, the echo of loss, the guilt he couldn't shake, that Clara never got to hold the child she gave her life for, that maybe he wasn't doing enough, that maybe being invisible to the world meant he was failing somehow. Yet every morning, when Liam's hand found his in the crosswalk outside school, when that little voice called out, "Love you, Dad," he knew he hadn't lost everything. He still had a story left to tell. The office building stood like a monument to ambition, 40 stories of mirrored glass and cold perfection rising against the city skyline. By day, it buzzed with movement, laughter behind closed doors, and the clicking heels of people who believed the world turned a little faster just for them. Its lobby smelled faintly of lemon and money, polished marble floors stretching like runways, and spotless chrome elevators gliding like whispers into the sky. Art lined the walls, paintings that cost more than Ray's annual salary, abstract brushstrokes that no one stopped to interpret. There was beauty in the building, yes, but not warmth. The lights were always a little too bright, the temperature always a little too cold. Every corner seemed to scream success, but left no room for softness. By night, it was different, quiet, hollow. The heartbeat of the building slowed, revealing a stillness beneath the surface. That's when Ray arrived, pushing his cart of cleaning supplies down hallways filled with designer furniture and ergonomic chairs that no longer held anyone. His world lived in contrast. His mop handle was duct-taped near the top, where the wood had splintered. His sneakers had holes where his toes peeked through on rainy nights. The plastic bin on his cart was scuffed from years of elbow grease and silent labor. But taped to the front, just above the blue nitrile gloves, was a drawing, a red rocket ship with two stick figures inside, one taller than the other. Beneath it, in crooked handwriting, were the words, "To the moon, Dad, love, Liam." He called it his fuel. His office was a janitor's closet tucked behind a fire exit. The walls were lined with cleaning chemicals and faded safety posters. But Ray had added his own touches, an old radio that played soft jazz when the signal held, a thermos he washed every night, and a second-grade spelling test Liam had aced, laminated with packing tape. There, among the rags and rubber gloves, was pride. Not loud or flashy, quiet, earned. At home, the story shifted again. A two-room apartment above a noisy laundromat. The window overlooked a brick wall, and the radiator clicked at odd hours like it had secrets to share. But inside was life. Drawings lined the fridge. The couch sagged in the middle, but carried bedtime stories and popcorn nights. The kitchen table was too small, but it held every science project, every late-night math worksheet. It held memories. The paint peeled in corners. The lights flickered if you ran the microwave and toaster at once. But Liam's laughter filled the space like sunlight. His sneakers by the door, his voice calling out Dad. When Ray came home smelling of ammonia and tired dreams. That was the heartbeat of Ray's real success. The city around them glimmered with wealth and power. But in the quiet edges of the world, on polished floors and in janitor closets, in cramped kitchens and worn-out shoes, there lived something far rarer. There lived love. Talia Harrington was born into wealth but never comfort. Her father, Gregory Harrington, was a man carved from marble, precise, powerful, cold, the kind of man who spoke in numbers, not emotions. As CEO of one of the city's most lucrative investment firms, he built empires with spreadsheets and broke spirits with silence. His offices, towering and pristine, reflected everything he valued: control, perfection, distance. Talia had spent her life trying not to become him, smart, driven, and disillusioned. She had returned from business school with ideas that didn't revolve around quarterly profits. She had a vision for social impact initiatives, programs for education, sustainability, and community empowerment. Her father called it fluff, then politely ignored her proposal and sent her to work in a spare corner of his own building. Beneath fluorescent lights and beside people who whispered about nepotism the moment she passed, she didn't mind the whispers. What she minded was the emptiness, the way people walked fast and spoke loud, but never felt anything. It was all curated smiles and buzzwords. She often stayed late, not because she had to, but because the silence after hours was more honest than the noise of the day. It was during one of those late nights, her sixth consecutive evening rewriting her proposal, that she saw him. Really saw him. He moved down the hallway like a ripple in water, careful not to disturb, quick to disappear. She watched from behind her laptop as he stooped to pick up a crumpled napkin someone had dropped hours earlier. He didn't frown. He didn't sigh. He simply folded the mess into his bin and moved on. She kept noticing him. A few nights later, someone had spilled coffee outside the break room. No one cleaned it. Hours passed. Executives walked by, stepped over the puddle, glanced but did nothing. She waited to see if anyone would say something. No one did. Then, around 10, he came. Ray, with a yellow caution sign and a stained towel. He knelt as if it were a sacred ritual. He cleaned in circles, slowly, until the floor gleamed again. Then he picked up the forgotten coffee cup and placed it in the bin like it deserved to be recycled, not discarded. The next night, it happened again. Trash left beside bins. Sandwich crusts ground into carpets. A receptionist laughed with her friend as she tossed a takeout bag under her desk. Just as Ray entered the room, she didn't look at him, didn't thank him, just kept scrolling through her phone. Lips curled in mock amusement. Talia's stomach tightened. There were worse things. Of course. Subtler. Sharper. She watched one of the floor managers, a man named Bryce, smug and immaculately dressed, stand outside the boardroom as Ray passed with his cart. Bryce made a show of looking at his watch. Hey, he barked, loud enough for the handful of lingering staff to hear. This hallway doesn't take 20 minutes to mop. If you're trying to get paid overtime by loitering, you're dreaming. Pow. The room froze. Ray, caught mid-step, didn't respond. He didn't raise his eyes or defend himself. He simply nodded, barely perceptible, and turned his cart around like a child dismissed from a room he didn't belong in. Talia sat at her desk, fists clenched beneath the wood. No one said a word. They all looked away, buried themselves in their screens, adjusted their watches. The silence screamed complicity. It wasn't just that Ray was ignored. It was that his presence made people feel powerful in the worst way, like stepping over him proved their altitude. But it wasn't just pity Talia felt. It was recognition. She knew what it was like to have people assume your place, to feel invisible, even when you were right in front of them, to have your worth weighed by association, his last name, her janitor's uniform. She didn't know his story, didn't know why someone with eyes so intelligent would choose silence over confrontation, but she was certain of one thing. He didn't belong in the background, and the next time she saw him, she wouldn't pretend he wasn't there. Bills sat unopened on the counter, their presence like a chorus of ticking clocks Ray couldn't silence. Final notices, payment reminders, smudged ink warnings that survival now came with deadlines. He rubbed his temples, his fingers trembling from exhaustion, not from physical labor, but from the quiet erosion of hope. That night, he was late again. Liam's school play had ended 2 hours ago. His son had gone on stage in a paper crown and cardboard armor, playing a brave prince who saves a village. Ray had promised he'd be there, even circled it on the wall calendar in red ink. But the building's 4th floor had a surprise inspection. A supervisor lingered too long, and by the time Ray made it home, the stage lights had cooled and the applause had faded. Liam had already gone to bed, his crown resting lopsided on the kitchen chair. On the table lay a drawing, a stick figure in a janitor's uniform holding hands with a smaller one in a cape. Above them, in bubble letters, was written, "I saved the dragon for you, Dad." Ray's knees buckled as he sat at the edge of the couch, the weight of failure collapsing onto his shoulders like wet cement. Is this all I'll ever be? He thought, staring at the darkness in the corners of the room. A man who keeps missing the moments that matter. He stood slowly, walked to the closet, and reached into the back where the forgotten parts of him were stored. He pulled out an old cardboard box, its edges worn and fragile. Inside lay pieces of another life, faded lesson plans, marked up poetry anthologies, a classroom photo of laughing students, and, at the bottom, A dog-eared manuscript. It was titled The Quiet Ones, a collection of poems he had begun after Clara passed, aching with beauty and grief. Some pages were stained with old coffee. Others carried faint pencil edits. Most were unfinished. He turned the pages slowly, his breath shallow. With every line, he felt the echo of the man he used to be, the one who believed stories could change people, that words mattered. But tonight, they felt like lies. With a quiet groan, he clenched the stack of pages in both hands, crumpling them, ready to toss them into the trash. His chest burned. His throat tightened. There were no tears at first, just silence so complete it roared in his ears. And then he broke. His shoulders shook as he sobbed, the manuscript falling to the floor like wilted leaves. It wasn't just the play he missed. It was the years, the life, the belief that he might still matter in a world that had long since moved on. He didn't hear the bedroom door open. Tiny feet padded across the floor. Liam stood in the hallway, rubbing sleep from his eyes, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Dad." Ray looked up, ashamed, scrambling to wipe his tears with the sleeve of his hoodie. But before he could speak, Liam crossed the room and wrapped his small arms around his father's neck. He said nothing. He didn't have to. That quiet hug was louder than 1,000 apologies. In it was forgiveness, love, and something else. Belief. Ray clutched his son tightly, the pieces of the manuscript scattered like feathers around them. And in that moment, through the sorrow and shame, something fragile stirred. Not hope, not yet, but maybe the memory of it. The hallway was quiet except for the distant hum of a printer someone had forgotten to turn off. The clock glowed past 11. Most of the building had long emptied, its polished surfaces reflecting only flickers of city lights from the high-rise windows. But tonight, Talia stayed late again. Another rewrite, another cup of bitter office coffee, another attempt to carve something meaningful in a place built for profit, not purpose. She stretched, stood, and walked the corridor to clear her head. That's when she saw him again. Ray was standing before one of the oil paintings, some abstract swirl of color no one ever paused to appreciate. The frame was crooked, tilted just enough to whisper imperfection. Everyone passed it by. No one cared. But Ray did. He had set his mop against the wall and was gently nudging the bottom of the frame, adjusting it a centimeter at a time until it rested evenly again. It was such a small act, so precise, so tender. Talia stopped, quietly watching from behind. He didn't see her at first. He took a step back, checked the alignment, and nodded faintly to himself. It was as if, in that single act, he restored more than a picture. He restored a little bit of order to a world that often felt tilted in ways no one noticed. "You have an eye for detail," she said softly. Ray turned sharply, startled. His eyes widened, hands still midair near the painting. I'm sorry. I was just... No, she interrupted, stepping forward. "I think it's beautiful." He relaxed, slightly, nodded, looked at the ground. A silence stretched between them, then she asked it, not as a pleasantry, not as small talk, but as if it mattered. "What's your name?" It hit like a stone dropped into still water. He blinked, unsure if he'd heard her right. No one had asked in years. He cleared his throat. "Ray," she smiled. "Hi, Ray, I'm Talia." He gave her a small nod. "Nice to meet you. Would you like some tea?" she offered, holding up the extra cup she had grabbed from the break room minutes earlier. "It's mint. Still hot." He hesitated, then slowly reached out and accepted it, their fingers brushing briefly. "Thank you." They stood in the hallway sipping tea, surrounded by silence and unspoken curiosity. That night was the beginning. Over the next few evenings, their paths crossed more intentionally. She stayed late more often, sometimes pretending to tweak documents, sometimes genuinely wanting to be near someone who didn't wear ambition like armor. Ray was hesitant at first, unsure why someone like her would talk to someone like him. But she didn't ask questions that judged. She asked questions that opened. "Did you always work here?" she asked one night, as they sat near the window overlooking the glittering city. "No," he replied quietly. "I used to teach high school literature." Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Yeah," he said with a faint smile. "Words were always kind to me. Life, not so much." "What happened?" He paused, then offered the short version. The tragedy, the loss, the choice to survive instead of dream. She listened without interrupting, her expression softening. "I used to write, too," he added, almost shyly. "Poetry mostly. I had this manuscript. Never finished it." "Doesn't matter now." "It does," she said, almost too quickly. It matters. You matter. The words sat between them like a candle lit in a dark room. Ray looked away, blinking against something behind his eyes. She didn't push. Instead, she just said, "If you ever want to share it, I'd love to read your work." He nodded, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement, like someone who heard a language he hadn't spoken in years. By the end of the week, she knew his son's name, knew how Ray made paper bag lunches with poems on the inside, how he once stayed up all night reading Baldwin just to answer a student's question. She laughed when he told her about his disastrous first attempt at making mac and cheese. She didn't treat him like a janitor. She treated him like a person. And for the first time in a very long time, Ray felt seen. Really seen. As they walked down the hall one evening, she turned to him and said, "You know, stories like yours, they're the ones people need to hear. They remind us what dignity looks like, what love looks like. If you believe stories like this matter." She paused, turning to meet his gaze. "Share this." The next time Bryce made a joke at Ray's expense, he wasn't alone in the hallway. Talia had been waiting, not hiding, watching. Ray was wiping down the edge of the boardroom doorframe when Bryce sauntered by, coffee in hand, oozing smugness. He slowed just enough to glance over his shoulder and mutter, "Careful not to fall in love with this place." "Ray, it's still out of your pay grade." Ray flinched, just slightly, but didn't respond. He reached for the mop again. Then Talia's voice sliced through the silence like glass. "Say that again," she said, loud and clear. Bryce turned, surprised, then smirked when he saw her. "Talia, didn't see you there?" Just lightening the mood, she stepped forward. "You humiliate someone and call it humor." He chuckled, "Uneasy now. Come on. He's just the janitor. We're all friends here." "No," she said, "you're not his friend. You're someone who thinks their title gives them permission to step on others. That ends today." His smile faltered. "You might not care about the culture here," she continued, "but I do, and so will my father." Talia's voice didn't tremble. She was no longer a quiet idealist hiding in back offices. She was the daughter of a CEO. Yes, but more than that, she was a woman who had witnessed enough silence and was done being part of it. Bryce coughed. "Let's not be dramatic." "I'm not," she said. "I'm documenting. And trust me, Bryce, you're not the kind of story people root for." Word spread quickly. The following week, Talia pitched an internal initiative called Human First, a mentorship and development program designed to highlight overlooked staff, cleaners, kitchen workers, assistants. She proposed storytelling sessions where employees could speak about their lives beyond their roles. She suggested workplace dignity training and empathy workshops. Her peers rolled their eyes. Her father raised an eyebrow. "You're not here to run a charity," Gregory Harrington said from behind his massive desk. Scrolling through her proposal, "I'm here to make this company something worth being proud of," she replied. He set the paper down. "We run numbers, not narratives. I won't sign off on fluff." Talia took a breath. "Then I'll fund it myself." That caught him off guard. "Excuse me, I believe in it. If you can't see the value in investing in people, that's your limitation, not mine." There was silence between them. Heavy, generational silence. He didn't argue, but he didn't approve either, which was just fine, because Talia didn't wait for permission. She invited Ray to speak at the first gathering of Human First, a small group, hosted in the very same boardroom where he'd once been told he didn't belong. At first, Ray resisted. "What would I even say?" he asked. "Just your story," she said gently. "You taught for years. You taught students. Now teach us." He showed up in his best shirt, the sleeves slightly too long, his palms damp with nerves. But when he spoke about raising a child alone, about watching the world blur past him, about how even the smallest kindness felt like sunlight in winter, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Talia recorded his words with his permission and turned them into a short video. She shared it anonymously online as part of a kindness campaign. She titled it, "The Man Who Straightened the Painting." It went viral within days. Comments poured in from around the world. "This reminds me of my dad, who worked 3 jobs but never complained. I pass my school janitor every day without thinking. I'm going to change that tomorrow. We need more people like Ray, and more people like her." Who noticed? Within a week, local news stations picked up the story. Bloggers wrote essays. The company's inbox flooded with praise, and Gregory Harrington. He called Talia into his office. No sarcasm, no dismissal. "Tell me more about this storytelling initiative," he said. Talia smiled. "I thought you didn't do fluff." He looked away, then back. We all learn eventually. The board voted to expand Human First Company-wide. Ray was offered a permanent position as Director of Internal Culture and Storytelling, a role created just for him. His job? To speak, to teach, to help others understand the value of unseen labor and the dignity of every role, no matter how small it seemed. He accepted, not for recognition, not for the title, but for Liam, for the boys and girls growing up thinking their parents were invisible, because now, finally, the world had started listening. The morning sun slanted through the tall glass windows of the boardroom, catching the edges of silver balloons that spelled out "Happy Birthday, Ray." Someone had set out a small cake. Nothing extravagant, just a modest chocolate one with blue icing and a few crooked candles. The room was filled with faces that once passed him by without a glance. Today, they smiled when he entered, not out of politeness, but out of genuine warmth. Ray froze in the doorway. He had never been surprised before, at least not like this. The applause that erupted caught him off guard, his instinct almost to step back, to check if they'd mistaken him for someone else. Talia was standing at the center, holding a simple brown box tied with a blue ribbon. "Happy birthday," she said, her smile soft, almost secretive. "We thought it was time to celebrate you properly." Ray's eyes darted around the room. The same people who used to walk past him now reached out for handshakes and pats on the shoulder. One of the security guards grinned. "About time we honored the hardest worker in this place." Liam stood near the window, fidgeting with excitement. He wore his best button-up shirt, slightly too big, sleeves rolled up like his dad's. His eyes sparkled when he saw Ray. "Open it, Dad, open it." Ray took the box, the paper trembling in his hands. He carefully untied the ribbon, lifted the lid, and paused. Inside was a leather-bound book, rich brown, embossed with gold letters that shimmered faintly in the light. The title read, "The Man Who Cleaned at Night." For a long moment, he couldn't breathe. He turned it over, fingertips tracing the edges like it was something sacred. When he opened it, his words stared back at him. Edited, printed, alive. His half-finished manuscript had been completed. Page after page, his handwriting transformed into type, his pain shaped into poetry. "Talia." "How?" he whispered. She smiled, her voice steady but emotional. "I found the draft you mentioned. You'd emailed it to yourself years ago. It was in your old work folder. I showed it to a friend who's an editor. She said it was beautiful. I thought it should see the world. Or at least see you again." The room blurred. His throat closed. The tears came before he could stop them. He pressed the book to his chest and laughed softly through the tears, shaking his head. "I don't know what to say. You already said it," Talia replied. "You just didn't think anyone was listening." Liam ran to him, wrapping his arms around his waist. "I told you, Dad," he said into Ray's shirt. "I told you people would see you." Ray knelt down and hugged his son tight, his eyes squeezed shut. The noise of the room faded. There was only this moment, the heartbeat of belonging, the warmth of recognition. A camera clicked somewhere in the background. Someone captured the image, a man in a simple button-up shirt, holding his son in one arm and his book in the other, smiling through tears. It wasn't a picture of success. It was a portrait of redemption. The janitor, who cleaned at night, was no longer invisible. He had become a storyteller, a teacher again, not in a classroom, but in the hearts of those who finally learned to see the quiet, steady light of a man who never stopped believing in goodness. Ray never fully gave up the mop, even after he took the role of staff writer and internal educator. With his own desk near the windows and a nameplate that gleamed under soft office light, he still chose to clean one whole way a week, by hand, by choice. Not because he had to, because he wanted to remember, to stay close to the ground where he'd once been invisible. People noticed now. They stopped to talk. Some asked him about his book, others about poetry. A few just said thank you. He always smiled, always listened, and when they asked why he still cleaned, he'd shrug and say, "Because some things keep you grounded." He spent more afternoons with Liam now, helping with school projects, walking him home, baking banana bread on weekends even though neither of them was good at it. Their small apartment still clicked and creaked, but it felt bigger now. Brighter. Ray used his new position to host monthly storytelling workshops. He invited staff from every level, security guards, receptionists, interns, to share something meaningful about their lives. People cried, people laughed, people listened. The culture in the building began to shift. No longer just cold marble and sleek glass, but pockets of warmth, Smiles in elevators, shared lunches, new respect in old hallways. It started small, someone holding the door, someone learning the name of the woman who refilled the coffee machine. Then came the posters, simple, white, with bold letters. What's your name? They appeared near the entrance, in stairwells, outside the restrooms. A quiet reminder that everyone carried a story, and that seeing someone could be the beginning of changing everything. Talia kept her promise to build with purpose. Human First became more than a program. It became a philosophy. Her father never admitted she was right, but he started attending the workshops. Sometimes he even stayed until the end. As for Talia and Ray, they remained tethered, not by position, not by title, but by the night she asked him the question that began it all. What's your name? They met often, sometimes over coffee, sometimes just walking the halls. She'd tell him about her newest proposal, and he'd share a line from a poem he'd written that morning. Their friendship was quiet, sincere, and rooted in something rare. Respect that had nothing to prove. Ray's story had once been tucked away in the corners of a janitor's closet. Now, it echoed in boardrooms and break rooms, in laminated posters and quiet acts of kindness, in the heart of a boy who once drew rocket ships and believed his dad could fly, because sometimes, the greatest change begins not with noise, but with a name. He cleaned offices in silence, passed by in hallways, forgotten in elevators, invisible in a world that never stopped to ask who he was or what he carried, until one night, someone noticed, not because of a title, not because of a resume, but because of a question that changed everything. What's your name? Sometimes, that's all it takes. A name, a moment, a choice to see someone fully. So now ask yourself, who around you is still waiting to be seen? Is it the woman who stocks the vending machine? The man sweeping the street outside your office? The quiet cashier who never looks up? You don't have to fix the world. Just notice the people in it. If this story moved you, share it. Let it remind someone else to slow down, to care, to ask. What would you do if you saw someone being ignored every day? Have you ever been the person no one noticed? Leave a comment, start the conversation, because someone, somewhere, is still waiting for their name to be heard.